Hello, I think I'm right on time today. I don't dare doing anything fancy for an intro because I think probably everybody in Ireland is on the internet at the moment because it's only a couple of days from Patrick's Day, and we've a lot of tourists in. So I'm sure they are all, and their kids are all on the internet doing all sorts of communication and sending images and things. So I'm working from images today, and I've got a week's load of sketching outdoors done, and some color and black and white references is what I'm working from today because I'm working with color and tone today, and I'm going to work on two different pieces. So it's high hopes, but for an hour it would be high hopes. But I'm really looking forward to it, particularly this week because I had painting interrupted yesterday. I had settled down for no, the day before I think it was, and I'd settled down for nice painting session with a new set of Cotman Studio watercolor set that I got, and um, I knocked them off this table, and I discovered the hard way that those watercolors aren't held into the pans or the palette in any way. So I had about half of them swatched out already, but a lot of them I hadn't, and a lot of the blues looked the same. So between the Kuretake set and the Cotman set, of watercolors. Um, I've done a lot of swatching, and I now have that Winsor Newton Cotman set of watercolors all swatched out for in case of further mishaps, but just to see the colors as well. Um, and the Kuretake swatched out, and they're all sitting in my new botanical sketchbook, which I made, which I had been really looking forward to using, but quite scared of using. But it started now. I've started on, I've watercolor pages in it, and I have um, cartridge pages in it just for, painting and general sketching. And I'm going to be working in it today. And I can't wait because after I spilled the watercolors, there's the paper I'm using. And after I spilled the watercolors, there was a mishap while I was cleaning up that I didn't even know about at the time. But I had a wash on in the washing machine in the utility room, and that was busy flooding. So when I went to take the wash out, I realized the whole floor of that room was flooded. And I ended up in this nightmare zone of cleaning that for several hours. And then ended up thinking, oh my God, it might flood again. And really, I've got to reorganize this whole room and get things up on shelves. So I got into this, I'm going to have to do a makeover of the room situation, which was horrendous. I just wanted to paint. A lot of time when you're a painter, there are all these kind of life things get in the way of doing any painting because takes time painting and sketching, doesn't it? And you want to be in an unhurried zone. Takes time getting to places. I showed you a little um short video upload of me at this place doing my little bit of working on mosses and a tree, bit of a tree, mosses. But what I was really interested in trying to practice was doing these little rocks that have moss all over them because I find rocks very difficult to do. And I have this recent fear of purple. Well, it's not a recent fear of purple. It's a recent getting over my fear of purple. I'm determined to get over it because I now see the usefulness of purple in landscape. So some of that is going to happen today. But the approach is that I'm going to do a tonal study and I'm going to do a color study. So you see, I have these reference photos. I went back to the place and it was raining fairly heavily when I went back, but I did get a little bit more sketching done. But I also edited a photo rather badly. When I came back, printed it out rather badly. But because I have two lots of sketchbook references for this, I don't mind. But one of the ones that I printed it out in grayscale because I had been watching straight after last week's live stream. Sandy Hester, another painter on YouTube, Sandy Hester's um, most recent video came up, and it was about color mixing, and she does a lot of landscape, you see, and she had a few things she was doing. I was going, yeah, that's a good idea to do this, look at the thing in grayscale. She was doing a clever thing. She was looking at her palette, her current palette mixes, and that's a great that it's not a live stream, keep saying live stream. That's a great video to look at for color mixing for landscape. Okay. She does really nice things. I just look for Sandy Hester and you'll find her. She's Sandy with an I think. And there are lots of lovely color mixes in that. But the thing she was doing, she took a photo of all her color mixes laid out in her sketch pad and analysed that in black and white to see, was she using a full range of tones, or was she kind of hovering around mid-tones all the time, or were all her tones that she likes mixing, were they all very dark or what? And she actually did have an okay range, but it was such a good trick. And it's a trick that gets used very commonly when you're working up a painting, right? Because the traditional way of doing things is you do a tonal study and you do color studies often separately. And the reason for that is it breaks down the problem into two different components. So, as you know yourself from anything you do in life, like me with my disaster in the utility room, you break the problem down into different components. You say, first, I've got to clean the floor, and then I've got to clean the whole room. Then the last component will be putting in extra shelves in that room so that everything gets up off the floor, so it's not as crowded in there. And that reminds me, actually, while we're talking about crowded, I have been promising a new video upload about how I organize my studio space and everything, because it is helpful looking at other artists, how they manage in their space. And I have a tiny space here, and I've never really shown it to you all in one go. And it does evolve a bit. But within the next few days, I promise, I've already started shooting it because I shot the layout I have today while I'm filming. Um, I will give you an upload of how my space is organized on the little desk I work at and the surrounding space, which has to hold all the art gear that I work with. And as you know, if you've been around the channel for a while, I work with a lot of different media. So I have a lot of gear. I also do craft work and I have a lot of that. And it all has to be stored in some way, and yet it has to be near me. So I am going to show you in the video how I organize that and how I keep evolving it all the time in order to try and keep it organized. Now, it gets into an overload situation fairly frequently, and that was part of the issue with the watercolor set um, fallen off the table the other day. That's part of the issue. You've got this overcrowding potential happening all the time. And I'm not a minimalist, so I'm not going to show you a video where you see this perfectly neat space. But I do have a philosophy for how I organize things in a way that I can usually find what I'm looking for within about at least 5 minutes. And it's to hand, but a way of putting things away as well, so that when I'm finished working with one medium, I have somewhere to put it out of the way and then work with another medium, but it's not so far out of the way I can't get it back. So you might find some bits of it interesting to look at, or you might just like laughing at it and saying she's not organized at all. I don't know. We'll see what you think. So that'll be happening in a few days. But right now, let's get to work. And what I want to do, I'm armed with the photos. I'm armed with a couple of sketches. And this idea of tonal stuff, right? If we look at the last sketch I did, well, this was actually the last sketch I did while I was at that spot of these rocky stones. Here's the photo, which is a very uninspiring photo, but you can see the stones with the moss on them there and the kind of purpley blue color of them, and then all this gorse growing on top of them, and um, very pale coloured grasses intruding over. It's quite a busy tangle of a scene, isn't it? It's tricky, you know. Um, so you would need to break down the problem a bit, and you would need to break it down into two. Think of it in terms of color, but also think of it in terms of tones. So this is the point of doing two separate studies, and it's useful to look at the photo in black and white as well, because in the photo all the tangle of gorse and everything and the grass is coming up as almost as white as the unprinted section of the page, whereas in my one of my drawings, which I have a short video uploaded as well, if you haven't seen it yet and you want to take a quick look, it shows the spot as well as the drawing. Um, this all looks, it's very dark, isn't it? Compared to this, where have all the lightest tones gone? Now, I would disagree with this photo slightly. I'm always disagreeing with photos, but I don't edit photos very much. But the black and white version compared to the color version, I would argue that a lot of stuff is happening in the black and white version that's a lot lighter than what's happening in the color version. But sometimes you get surprises when you look at something in black and white compared to a photo in color, because the color influences how you actually see tone as well. And I think as an artist, you have to be a little bit aware of that and say, well, am I thinking that's darker just because of the color? Or, it, you know, is it actually that dark compared to something else? Now, I'd argue that the lightest tone in this, if we were talking about kind of grayscale, black and white, the lightest tone would be that grass, which is nearly white. It's actually a very beautiful, a very pale, ochre come lemony yellow. Very nice, but it's one of the lightest parts, apart from the white lichen growing on the stone, which lichen is also a huge challenge for me. I can't manage. It's like patterns on clothing. I find it really, really hard to put a pattern on stone and have it look like it's actually just on the surface of the stone and not floating. Even that is a huge challenge. On moss, hard too. Not as hard, but I didn't even really get the distinguishing tones in the moss particularly well in that drawing. It's not too bad, but I failed miserably at getting the grass and the little bits of sort of dried out stuff, heathery kind of stuff that's growing out of the moss overgrowing the stone, because it doesn't, the medium I was working with doesn't wipe back particularly well, and you need to either work in very fine detail and carefully around it, or add something else on top of it, like come in and add a white acrylic paint or something like that. It was this quick sketch, so it's limited, but I missed out on a lot of tones. And when you come back in and you're trying to sort of do this kind of thing, wiping back, um, it's often, even if you get a little small mono eraser like this, it often doesn't allow you to work all that accurately. Like it's coming back a little bit there. I'm managing to get a little bit of that, but I would have to kind of work back in quite carefully with that. Now, I don't want to do that because that is a working drawing towards something else. And one of the other things I'm working on is trying to stay a little bit loose. And I'm wanting to see this overall sections of tone. Then I want to work with another one that's a continuation of what I was working with in this one, and I'll have to show it to you. It's a very long piece, so I'll have to kind of keep moving it as I'm showing it to you. I want to continue on with this. See and do my tones need a bit of refining because there's not definition very much of different tones happening here. I think it's perhaps a little mid-tony. Now, to be fair, in the photo, there was a lot of mid-tony going, but then again, the photo isn't that accurate in terms of the areas that were dark. All the stones and everything, it generalized about them and made them all dark as well. Somebody's a better photographer with Lauren, who visits my channel a bit. She's a fantastic photographer. Um, if you go over to her channel, you'll actually see her working from really good photographs that she took and using them very effectively in her own work. Um, so she's worth looking at for that. But I'm sort of, I don't really work from photos that much, don't find them that inspiring because I don't do very inspiring photos. But this one is more helpful in terms of that section. And I do want to focus in on this section just because um, that's the subject matter, those rocks with moss on them, that I'm really trying to um, get to grips with. But I have included the whole scene as a composition because I want to be able to pin them down in terms of um what's happening with other tones, okay? And in terms of color as well, what's happening with other colors, and have a good enough color reference in this to do it. So I'm working from these two sketchbooks. That's actually one of the better sketches, even though there's less info in it in some ways. Structurally, what's happening with the rocks is better in that one. But we've got loads to work from, you see, for this problem solving. And I think you'll enjoy it because even if the reference photos aren't very good for today, and I don't have the reference photos, a big version of them over on the community tab, as I often would have, because um, they're not good enough photos for you to work from. Even though I don't have that for you, I do have things that I think will be of interest to you. And if I can find the piece of paper I'm looking for, you see, this is what's going to upload a video for you of how I stay organized. It's cheeky of me, really, isn't it? Because I don't look very organized at the moment. I am looking for a particular piece of paper because for the watercolor piece, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be working with these guys, which is what I did the sketch with, and I found them so great to work with. Somebody gave me those a while back, Derwent sketching pencils, and took me a while to get around to using them. I just had them there in stock, you know. And whenever I use them, I've only used them a couple of times, but whenever I've used them, I think to myself, oh, these are really lovely to use. They're lovely. They feel very silky on the paper, but they don't, um, they don't sort of have the greasy, fall aparty feeling that some pencils do, and they're blacker than ordinary pencils. So I would highly recommend them. And I don't know where the heck I put that piece of paper. I'll find it directly when I'm finished. But I'm going to get another. Here it is. It was over there drying. So this is the same watercolor paper that's in the sketch pad, but I'm working on it out of the sketch pad because this isn't exactly one of my botanical pieces, but I want to have it. I want to have the color one on this side of my new botanical sketch pad, which is kind of a longer sketch pad than my usual ones and doesn't fit in the screen, perfectly at the distance that I have to be to get my camera to focus my my equipment isn't kind of, top of the range, let's say. So I'm sort of kind of work around things a little bit. But what I want to do is I want to have the black and white piece here, the tonal piece, on the watercolor paper, and then over here I have my white cartridge, which is that extra heavyweight cartridge. They're both very fairly heavy papers, but the reason I'm working in my botanical sketchbook is though because although this is not strictly speaking a botanical subject, it's not a close up of a flower or anything, it's a landscape. It's the right proportions for what I want to do. So I want to have these two side by side so I can work with them. So for the first one, I've sort of cheated a little bit. Finally, she gets around to actually painting. If you're used to me, you're used to a certain amount of chatting going on. But it is kind of technical chatting. Apart from whinging about having to do cleaning, you know, that's art lifestyle stuff. Or just going to whinge about having to clean. Um, so it's still in the right subject range. I want to get something to a book or something to prop under that, so it's exactly the same height. Uh, Here we go. Okay, that's now. So the stuff on the happening on this page already. So I cheated a bit, right? And it wasn't a big cheat because I was using this stuff, art masking fluid, and it takes a while. It's a rubbery kind of a thing that you paint on with a brush you don't care about, or um, better still, a rubber tipped brush or a bit of skewer or something like that because it wrecks brushes. But it takes a minute to kind of set. So I wanted to have that done before I came on. I was going to say so it could start straight in, but I just yacked, didn't I? So the reason I put this on was I'm painting those foreground grasses, haven't I? Because they're a very important tonal part of the painting. And if we look at just See, it's very hard to see what the thing is when you're just looking at the tonal version, I think. So I'm showing you the color thing as well, so you can see that it's stone with mosses over it, and then all this gorse and other dried grasses around it. And then there's that tree plunked on the top of it. So you can see that from the original sketch, all right. This wasn't hugely successful, the rocks down here, because I had lines of gorse coming up in front of it, and there's so many layers of things going on. It's tricky. So we're going to try and simplify some of that down, but tonally first. Okay, so it's one of those situations where you get a few goes at something. So I'm armed with my grayscale picture, which has generalized about the tones even more because we've got very, I think in terms of three tones, really. I think of darkest, mid-tone, and lightest area. So very, very easy to find the lightest area because we're looking for what's nearest the white uh, there. And then the darkest area is easy to find because you're looking for what's nearest to black, you know? So, making a decision about an image is easy in terms of finding the lightest and the darkest area. And then, the mid area, you can say everything else is mid tone, and then split that up even more. So you could say that there's some really black areas in here, then the lighter areas of moss are a mid tone, and then all these grasses are a lightest tone. Or you could add another tone in there, split it up again and say, yeah, but within that, there is another little tone here on the edge of the grasses that is a nearly the lightest tone, but not quite. You see, you've got like five tones going on now. So looking at something in that very clinical way, I think is incredibly useful. But um, getting the lightest and the darkest is a great starting point, isn't it? So one of the things that I use to get the darkest areas is the tree, because on the tree, and I have to keep remembering to move this down, on the tree there were some really dark tones. And I'm going to show you materials here that I think you'll enjoy very much. Um, because you mightn't have used these. I only started using some of these materials a while back. Now, I ended up using these pencils a lot when I was out. One of which I lost again already. Hang on, that was the HB one. And what have I got for the other one? Oh, they're actually both. I don't know why he had two HBs. I thought one was darker than the other, but no. So, compared to a normal pencil, they're fairly black. But I'll show you another thing I was using for the black and white sketches when I was out. This is so handy because this was pretty handy. I could hold it in one hand because it was this color thing, right? We're going to use this set today in the studio as well, just to show you how this little set works really well for gouaches or jelly gouaches. If there were gouaches, you'd be squeezing your tubes out into those little containers, and there's a water container in there, and it all clips together. It's such a clever thing. I got that on Amazon, but I had seen some other artists using it, and I thought that would suit me great. And it's got this little silicone thing that holds your jelly. See, jelly gouache are not runny, but they're, a little bit fluid. So that's a way of holding them in when you're traveling. But I use that in the studio as well because it keeps it on the table, doesn't it? Working with the small space. And I find it nice to work with. But it does have a little palette on it for when you go out as well. Very small, but you can keep wiping it back. So in theory, you see, and this is what I was doing when I was out, I was able to hold that in one hand and paint with the other hand because I had this very handy item, a water brush. And that's a Derwent as well. These are all English brands. These are just whatever art shops near me have. And this water brush dispenses water. I usually have to squeeze it a little bit to get it to start sending out water. Dispenses water for you so that you don't even have to have this bit involved. You don't have to hold on to that or anything. So you can just have, if you have the right size sketch pad, you can have everything balanced like this with your palette and everything and be working that way. It's ideal. I love it. And it's very comfortable, and if somebody comes along the road, as they did, I was saying I had a farmer in a tractor very angry at me for standing in the road painting the tree. I'm able to get out of the way fast, you see. But this is the other thing that when I saw it, I thought, I think that would be very useful for painting things outside. And it is Art Graph watercolor graphite, which comes in this little box here, which tells you a little bit of information about it. But basically, it's graphite that's in a tin, like a watercolor would be, in in a pan, if you like. But it behaves. I'll just get a spare piece of paper to show you. It behaves a bit like a well, not Payne's grey, like a watered down black watercolor. So you can come along if you're doing something tonal, and say I decided that this bit of the tree was a mid-tone. I can come along with my water pen and get that mid-tone fairly handy, you see, and quickly. So the speed of doing something is pretty handy as well. So it's nice having the right tools for the job. These are great tools for doing a tonal thing. I can build up a darker tone with this, but I did discover that charcoal will go a bit darker now. They're charcoal Some liquid charcoals, I wasn't able to source them, but I think they go darker than graphite does. But I'm doing my usual thing, going out of shot. Sorry, but I don't think this goes as dark as um liquid charcoal does. But if I could remember, I think it's Per Fleur. There's somebody on YouTube does really beautiful tonal studies of stills from movies um, with this art graph um, graphite, and it's actually lovely to work with because it has a kind of a slightly grainy appearance. So she's using it so well because it is perfect for film stills, for giving that grainy feeling. And these two together, I found, are beautiful. That watercolor pencil, and it's not a watercolor pencil in the sense that your watercolor pencils usually would be um, these kinds of things. I do use these quite a lot. They would be colored pencils, but they behave like watercolors. You can add water to them. They're not. They're a wash pencil, so they're like they look like an ordinary lead pencil, if you like, until you add water to them. But they're actually blacker, I found, than a lead pencil. So I really like them. And you can see how that's lovely for getting tones. But watch when I add water to these as well. I'm actually using the lid here because I want to be able to squeeze out a bit of water. The water doesn't come out of this hugely consistently, I have to say. Look how black that goes. Isn't that nice? And you can mess about with that a bit, you see. So it's really beautiful for getting your tones, and you can get a degree of accuracy about your tones by working back in with your pencils. And I like that the pencils will make thin little lines as well. So it's nice, isn't it? Uh, I think it's a wonderful material. So down here, we're not getting very far. See, I get so excited about doing trees that I end up not doing anything else. This is so me. I just want to spend forever on doing trees. I love doing these bits on trees because you can just run a long line down these and not be too hung up on precision. And they just create a wonderful negative space in between that is so enjoyable to work with. And I'm working back and forth between that art graph stuff and the watercolor wash pencil. And already we're getting a nice color. But so you want to decide as you're going along tones for this. And uh, this has come out in the print as being as white as the sky, being as white as the paper around it. Um, in color, I thought it was a little bit darker. It was very pale grey blue sky. It was a little bit darker than then a little bit darker than the whitest white. But it is the whitest white within the picture. So you could decide that the whitest white within your picture is going to stay white paper. That's one way of going. Or you can do what I did when I was out, which was I decided to indicate some of the color here, but the color actually became lighter as it went up. And that color piece is actually taking a bit of a note on that. So I'm going to do a little bit of that as I approach the bank down here of which is going to be a very pale color. I'm going to put in a little bit of this art graph stuff. I actually have the edges of where I want this proportions of the picture to be already. So I'm using this like a watercolor wash, you see, and I'm just going that little bit darker as I go over here. And then in that background, there are trees, which I am ignoring the color of at the moment, but I remember them as a beautiful reddy color, which in my watercolors, I have a color that matches it beautifully. It's a light red, and I've never had a light red in a watercolor set before. Um, Not in my little field set of watercolors, which is a little small watercolor set, but it's so beautiful for those. And I'm just gonna blend up to the lightest tone there. And we've got a bank of, it's actually better to show you from this because you're always going to trust your own references better than manually sort of mechanical means references, because to me the way you see the thing is more important than what was there in a way. You know, I mean, I'm not doing kind of a fantasy piece or anything. It is naturalistic in inspiration, but so this is tonally, I'm seeing it as, if this was black and white, if I was squinting at it to reduce it to looking black and white, this tone might look similar to that tone. And in the photo, the middle of that tone is a bit darker really than that. And this one as well. So I mightn't, I'll give it to the camera. I might not have seen that perfectly, right? Now I can put that in with the art graph, but I can also do light shading with this if I want. So I like this tool very much, this using the pencil with the watercolor idea, because you get all the best bits of drawing, and I love drawing with kind of the nice looseness of watercolor. So I'm loving this as a material, absolutely love it. Now, so we have some of that tone making sense in relation to this background tone. But now I want to assess this background tone in relation to the next thing it butts up against. And you'll see me doing this quite a lot. Um, like in this part of this tree here, I'm only able to get the tone of it because I'm comparing it to what's happening beside it. You know, I'm saying it's this dark, but it's this dark in relation to the other thing happening here beside it. I wouldn't be able to see the tone only for that, would I? And I'm not going to worry too much about detail in this because I might be here all day if I did. But a certain amount of detail is important because you're getting some of your tones in there, you see. So I do have to include some. So there's quite a dark tone happening here on this tree. And I'll avoid the temptation to stay working on that. I'm just indicating some of it. But I do want to get rid of um, enough of the white on it to make it read in terms of tone reasonably accurately. So you can see it's reading a bit better against the sky there in terms of tone. It's making sense. But it's this very pale grass area here that I want to make sense of now. So there are a few little bits of trees that I had ignored initially in there. I could ignore them again, but I might just put a little bit of one in to give me an indication, a reading sort of the correct tone to go for this grass. And I also want to put in some of the tone of the gorse so that I'm sort of finding that very pale ochre yellow um, tone, because I'm trying to decide, am I going to leave it completely white, or is it just very slightly off? And I think I am going to leave it white because in the photo I'm working from and in my own color image, It was, it wasn't far off white. I remember having trouble when I was out there getting this a pale enough color because that's an issue that I have with these particular washes. That if you start off with them too dark, you have to wait for them to be really dry and put a couple of layers of pale paint over it to get it light enough. So the sky, part of the sky, and that grass is going to stay the white of the page, or actually this watercolor paper is cream watercolor paper. So the cream of the page. So you could even come into this watercolor paper and add little white highlights in places if you found something whiter happening in there. So what I'm doing is um doing very generalized color again, and I could actually get a bigger brush out for this. Now, when I look down here in this picture, um, there are very few white areas, aren't there? So let's have a look at where things are down here in terms of the rocks. I'm going to start finding the edges of these so that I can generalize about. There's the edge of the picture itself, and I'm putting in a little bit of the swinginess of the edge of that. And then there's some shadow in here. I'm drawing straight over this masking fluid, I don't mind. And I'm going to get some of the shape of the rocks in and the sort of proportions that I feel would be okay in relation to things before I start generalizing down with washes of things. But in fact, that's kind of gorse, three sections of gorse there. But in fact, what's really happening? I don't have good info for this. The rock actually runs down here, but I don't really have very good info for that side of it. Because you can't really see it. I have those two little guys in, then I have mossy bits, then I have this guy, if I'm going to generalize a bit, then it's very hard to see what happens in here. I know there's a dark area in here and a dark area up there, but that's it. That's kind of the most info I have. I just have kind of color info, the blue, purpley blue to distinguish from something gorsish happening here. It's because of the layers of tangled foliage on front of it that makes for that kind of confusion. So you can see how that could be kind of a challenging thing to do. And it is handy that I have a drawing implement because I can do some bits of indicating shapes of gorse in drawing and some bits of just, shading things. Um, And I have the main kind of swing of where things are now starting to get established. This bit I was seeing that as a rock um, a minute ago. Do I? Oh no, one, two, three. I have kind of the three sections. Oh, I have the two in one there. So there's my two there. That's actually a wider space. Getting things in the right place kind of matters a little bit. That is sort of in line with that edge of the rock. I'm trying to place it. So that is going to be the mossy bit. Okay, that's going to be quite a dark mossy bit. There'll be some drawing in there. Now this is where I kind of messed up a bit last time. So I'll show you how I did the masking fluid thing, and we'll just hope it dries in time. And the sort of traps they have in this quite often defeat me. I was quite a while trying to open this earlier. The child safety. You see how thick it goes on for me. That can take a while. But there's this kind of scrubby bit of dry foliage there coming out of the rock that I want to leave completely white. And when I rip off a little bit of, or peel off a little bit of this masking fluid, you hopefully will see why I made the decision to use it in the first place. I didn't have this with me out in the field, and I remember thinking, gosh, I wish I had. Because the point of this, even though I have to avoid this bit now for a second till it dries, the point of this stuff is that you can do a wash right across it, and that bit will still stay untouched. So if you have something with a very defined edge on it, like a very, very pale bit like this, it's actually a pale, kind of reddy, that light red color that I have in my watercolor set. It's actually that pale reddy color, but I don't want that with a dark tone on it because I won't be able to recover that color. And that's what happened with the original sketch. So half the trick is knowing what went horribly wrong, or not horribly. It didn't go horribly wrong, but it's all very samey tone, this one, isn't it? So, you can't tell or you can't tell where the rocks are. You can't really tell where the moss is. It's got really interesting scribbles and marks and textures, and I like it, but it doesn't really describe moss and rocks terribly well because it's not preserving enough of the light tones in there to show the structure well enough, But like, it's no worse than the photo turned out. If you look at the photo doesn't look unlike it, does it? It's just some sort of darkness with tangle around it that you're seeing. So I'm trying to get it a little bit more sort of tonally sorted out in this one. So if I do any better at all, I'll be doing well, won't I? So, and we're having fun. I'm having fun here. So I just hope this is kind of useful to other people. I did think this was a lovely material, this art graph thing, and that it's absolutely beautiful to use um with your watercolor wash pencils. And when that bit's dry, I'm going to peel off the art masking fluid and show you how that section looks. And this is one of the things I hate about the lives, that if something takes like 15-20 minutes to dry, I can't show you the thing when I want to show it to you. I have to wait around for it to dry. And sometimes I end up saying, oh, I'll post something on the community tab because I'm either not finished or the thing won't dry in time. But it is kind of, I think I find it useful to watch people doing things live sometimes, because you can watch how somebody's thinking, and sometimes, like me, they'll kind of talk you through what they're thinking as well. So I might switch back to my watercolor pen here, brush, just because it's useful. And considering it's such a big roundy point on it, um, you actually get good detail with this brush, so I would recommend this brush as well. So I'm trying to get that shaded bit there right, because all the shading on the stones and everything, I'm going to relate to that. Um, the grasses and things, the gorse here, I'm going to generalize about, because in this black and white one, a lot of it is shown as very white, but I didn't find it quite that white, so I'm going with a not very white approach to it. But I want to fill the whole area with tone rather than just working it as a drawing or a sort of cartoon nearly of it. A lot of people do kind of cartoon style drawing where they're not really going for the naturalistic tones that they see there. They're going for a the patterning of the shapes within that area. Um, and then your mind kind of then makes up the tone for it, if you see what I mean. It's kind of a difficult concept to explain, but and there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's a style. It's kind of a style kind of nearly taken from graphic design, but it's been around for a long time, that kind of style. But something when somebody talks about something being painterly, they're talking about quite often something that's done in with a very tonal approach to developing the painting as a whole, if you see what I mean. So the tonal approach would be, uh, doing what I'm doing here and trying to really pin down, well, what's this tone doing beside that tone, rather than looking at just the pattern and the outline of things. And, it doesn't always work unless you've got the skills there. It didn't work very well for me in that drawing I did during the week. But this is why I'm working on it, isn't it? I'm working on those skills. So I am adding some patterning things in because there are some areas of shadow on the edge of those gorse. So, some areas of structure have to go in order to explain tones and how tones are. So I did find that area quite challenging to do because there were a lot of shapes coming up that were took a lot of drawing to do, if you see what I mean, because these things, the actual gorse, they had dark center, sometimes browny, sometimes greeny. The branch down the middle sometimes had a reddish cast to it, but then the edges of them, um, as the light hit them, were paler. So, like, how do you do that? You don't do that in tones at all. So there's going to be only the stem and little bit suggested of this, and then the rest is just left the pale color. Don't know if this is making sense the way I'm explaining it. So I've managed to avoid those rocks really well so far, haven't I? I can't avoid them forever though. I have to deal with the thing that I find tricky. So I have a choice here. I can use my color thing to help me see structure, okay? Because some of the structure of it isn't as easy to see in black and white. But the black and white does help me see where the darkest areas are on things. So that will be a good starting point. For example, this rock over here, I can tell that one side of it is um, a darker mid-tone. Okay, so if we had decided that a mid-tone was kind of, oh, that's actually a drop of water on it now, it's going blue. Say this was a mid-tone, or this rock here was a mid-tone. This one is a slightly darker mid-tone with some of the mid-tone on it. So I'm going to come over here to this rock and avoiding a couple of white bits. I have to decide where to put them. See? Avoiding a couple of the white bits, I am going to. Sorry, I'm reaching for another pencil here. My pencil keeps rolling off into the distance. I'm going to find some of the dark tones here to avoid that shape because that shape is helping me find my way around the rock a bit. I'm going to get some of my very darks in there. So every time you find a mid-tone, it's quite helpful, I think, to be looking for a dark tone near it, uh, to make sure your mid-tone is kind of, you know, progressing in the right way, let's say. So there are other areas in there that I'm going to do just your plain old mid-tone that this rock is, right? Now, this rock also has little bits that are darker as well, that darker mid-tone, what I'm calling a darker mid-tone, and it has some of the darker black. And it also has the bits that I find really difficult, the lichen coming down that just kind of sits on the surface of it, and for me tends to float. And that is, we have to assess how light that lichen is in relation to the gorse. It's the lightest. It's as light as this really pale grass up here, you see. So already, I think I'm not going to go too much into too many details because I might lose it again, but I think I'm handling tones a bit better than I managed to out in the field. And this kind of it's a good demonstration of why you would do further studies when you get back to the studio from what you've done in the field, and when to do them or why to do them, why you would be doing that. You don't do it all the time, because sometimes, you're not struggling with particular problems or anything. I have a very dark bit here that I'm trying to find the position of somewhere here. Getting my art graph stuff involved again. And I do really like the lovely kind of particulate um nature with it. That little very fine granulation going on in it is very nice. So we've got a few dark bits hanging around in here. Now, you see, if you were doing an acrylic painting or an oil painting, all you have to worry about really is doing the dark bits, and then you can layer over them some of the light stuff. But for some kinds of painting, like watercolor, you might not get the opportunity to do quite as much of that, because you can't layer as heavily, let's say, without losing what's nice about watercolor. So I'm trying to think like a watercolorist for this one. And I'm learning to for the jelly gouache as well. It takes me a while to get used to a new medium. I don't know what's happening here. I'm going to have to look at another image to see. Oh, it's another piece of very pale lichen. I've been on nearly an hour with this. This is going to be a long live stream, folks. I don't want to rush it too much, you see. But I would be three-quarters the way finished this one, and then we'll start working on color. There's no point in just rushing through something and not getting anything worthwhile to be able to show what I'm banging on about. Maybe you'd learn just as much about what I mean if I didn't talk at all, but I'm always afraid somebody isn't gonna get what I'm trying to explain unless I sort of talk through it as well. I can't help it. I'm sorry. So I'm leaving a lot of this white, and actually I'm just looking at the picture. It shouldn't be. So I'm gonna lose some of the work done there. You see, this is it. That was a learning thing there. I just caught myself in time and said, "Hang on, what am I doing there? That's not working." So I have to go back into this area. I'm looking at the photo all the time, and I've got my sketches there as well. And I'm going to generalize about this area of tone here and not worry about the shape of the gorse at all. Okay. And I'm going to go in there and do some black areas where I see them. Still not worrying about the gorse shape too much. The gorse shape is just coming out as a light pattern in between as a result of where I put the black bits, basically. Now, all in here is where that um, moss is growing, and I'm just leaving some areas of it with those little bubbly bits on because there's a lighter area in there, but it's showing me to avoid that area basically. But a lot of it is quite dark, and this is where uh, I sort of lost the plot slightly, I think, when I was out in the field because I didn't keep those areas quite light enough. I didn't manage to maintain it. I was trying, but it just kept getting darker. Where I put them in as a mid-tone, which was correct. They're a very dark mid-tone if you look at them. But they went too dark when I was trying to fill in some of the dark around them. They just kind of got infected, if you like. So it's a little bit patterny and generalized about what's happening there. It's not as a piece of drawing, it might not be excellent, but tonally, it's what I'm doing is correct. And I might bring you in a little bit closer just to make sure you can see that, and then I'll go out again because my pencil, look at what happens. My pencil bunks, yeah, and I'm not going to be able to draw that close, but I think you might be able to see it better, the detail and things, if I do this. So you can see what I'm trying to do. Now I've still got all the masking tape, right, or the masking fluid. That's going to come off, but there's going to be some bits in here, and I will go back out a little bit with this. If you don't mind too much, sorry. I'm bouncing around a lot today, aren't I? I'm going to I do have the marked a bit there. I'm going to try and come in here over the masking fluid and get that mid-tone. And when I look at it, it's not really a mid-tone. It's a dark mid-tone with a very dark black with the darkest of the mid-tone for the mossy bit. Okay, so that's where you start discovering um, more tones, more tonal values in the middle of things. So this is the bit that has the mossy coming out. So the rock, it's like really hard to keep the structure of the rock, and that's because there's so much kind of stuff growing all over it. And that's kind of what makes it such a challenging thing to do. I wonder, is this dry enough to actually try and recover a little bit of tone there? Sorry, the camera's going to be moving around the place. But can you imagine if I was trying to work with color as well as figuring out the tones at the same time? That increases the difficulty of some of the problems, say. So this is why I'm talking about breaking down the problem a bit into two things: into your tone and color. Now, when you're doing color, tone comes into color, of course it does. You know, when you're thinking about color, you're always asking yourself, well, what tone is it? How light or dark, as well as what color it is. So it's not like it goes away or anything. So this shades down into darkness, but because I have the masking fluid on those little light bits that are going across it in sections, hopefully it's not going to be as nightmarish as when I was out in the field. So we're gradually getting that feeling of uh, foliage in a little kind of a recess there. I have a kind of oh yeah, I see what it is. It was this going across. I was wondering why this was so such a wide kind of section here. It's in the right place though. Can't believe it. I actually got it in the right place. So there's all this really, really black bit going on here, the overhang kind of bit, and it's all very sort of complicated tangle. But basically, coming out of that tangle, you've got your mossy bits, which you can keep adding darkness to with two different media now. And I have two of the bits of white, and I have one bit missing, which I've decided would be there-ish somewhere. And I don't know whether I'm dry enough to. It will allow me to rub back a little bit, but not a lot. It's a little bit wet there for that. But I want to go in and be quite dark in here and have the moss just touch the edge of that. So I know when I do this, I learn so much from doing this. And I did a huge amount of this kind of thing in art college. And it was just a revelation to me how much you could learn from breaking the thing down into two things, tonal studies and then color, and thinking about them slightly separately in order to learn. Very, very useful, I thought. So I think it's becoming a little bit more successful than the other one was. And what I'll do is I will do my little trick and put that up on my back of my door tonight. I have a little my gallery space in here, which is basically the back of the door. And every time I walk in and out of the room, I'll be able to see this again and say to myself, well, hang on now, did I do any kind of a better job in this tonal analysis of that scene than I did when I was in situ? See how nicely it lets you draw. I love this so much. And we're going to have fun now in a sec, taking off the mask and fluid, at least on the upper bit. So there's some generalization goes on because once we got over this tricky area here, we can come down here and generalize about there's a pale bit in the middle and a very dark bit here. We can generalize about that. And it has been, although it's a difficult tangle, it has been a terribly interesting subject to do in black and white from that photo. You know, um, I looked at the photo and I despaired of being able to do anything with it, but I've really enjoyed working from it because I uh, wasn't exactly trying to get the thing to look like the photo. I was trying to get the thing to function as a tonal study for something and be have the topic of the picture that I'm making now be uh, tones in a tangle of a weird landscape thing. And that is what it is about, and it's a more interesting thing for me, I think, not wanting to copy the photo because it wasn't a good photo, you know. But it's not a good photo, but it's really very, very useful for doing this tonal study. So that's its function, you know. I knew what function I wanted it for, and it's extremely useful for that function. Now, again, this bit here, that's rock. You'd never guess from this. It's just a midtone. But there is a little bit of structure shown, tiny bit. And sometimes with rocks, I think it's those little linear things that really give you the clue. Okay, that's rock happening there. But yet, I don't like to turn those things into kind of generalizations, you know, and always do rocks that way because I don't want to make a really boring picture. Now, this is quite challenging for me. This bit, sorry. This bit here, because that's a tangle with some black bits in it. So I'm just going to draw the black bits and then let the rest take care of itself. Some of it is grey and some of it's black. And then some bits are sort of left white. So I'm going to forget its course and say it's tone. That's my whole approach here. It's not gorse anymore. It's just tone. Stop trying to get it to look like gorse, you see? Because that can be a trap of, you know, just, hey, it looks like the thing, that'll do. That's not what this is about. It's not about getting it to look like it particularly. It's about getting it to tonally um, be a tonal representation of the thing. Okay, I have the overhang thing functioning all right, I think. Um, and I'm moving back from it every once in a while to try and get a handle on it. And it's not until I can get that bit dry enough to be able to peel that off, I'll see if that worked. So I might have to do the painting and come back to some of the peeling off bit. So this is a mid-tone in here, so gonna just go in and do it and not worry. And then a darker tone down here. I constantly have to pull myself back from being too prissy about this. Um, because I'm wanting to get it to read better as planes around different objects and describe the objects well. And I keep having to say, no, 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 you're describing the tone now, you're describing the tone mainly. Don't worry about the rest. In a sort of final painting of something, I don't know if this will turn into a painting or not. So many good paintings out there to be painted. I passed I passed about four other things when I went back to this place to do the the last drawing to get more info on those rocks. Um, that I thought, wow, they'd be a great painting. So much it's about sort of cutting down what you're seeing, you know, all the time. Okay, so I'm going to do one thing and just start on one thing here just to show you. I'm going to get a little bit more of that background in. Now, I think this bit over here is dry, so we can get a little bit of peeling fun in even if my hands are filthy. So you see that? See when that starts coming off? It's preserved. Sorry, I'm shaking the camera. It's preserved that really pale bit and made it really interesting. And then you could go back in there if you wanted to do a few more little black bits or more work in at the edge of those. So that would have been helpful out in the field, except it was lashing rain, and that would have taken forever to dry. So uh, watercolor isn't great where I am for doing everything in the field. I'll just come back up a little bit so you can see this from a distance. This is the downside of working with to the size of this botanical sketch pad, that it's very hard to get it all in shot in focus. But I think that's a much better drawing already, even without the masking, all the masking fluid off it yet. It's a much better drawing. So hopefully by the time we get the color piece done, we'll have a bit more drying happening here. Um, but when you look at that one already, when you look at that one compared to this one, and I'm only showing the bottom section because this was the section I really wanted to work on. Um, yeah, like there's some things about the rocks there that are still, not perfect, and the gorse isn't very, well explained as being gorse in the foreground, but tonally, it's much better than this. This drawing wise might have uh, some better shapes and descriptions of linear things happening in it, but tonally this is a lot better. And it's a nice, interesting drawing, so I'm happy with that. So hopefully we get a nice painting now. Oh, I need a week, but I'll carry on. I'll carry on. I mean, I could go for a wee. Well, can I play music and then I can go for a wee? Yeah, there's no law saying I can't go for a wee. So you could look at some of the. I'll be very quick. Look at some of the reference materials while I'm gone and have a think, and we'll hope that the stream doesn't go black when I try and play a piece of music. It usually behaves itself when I play Asher Fuller. So we'll try her and I'll pop out for a quick pee and then I'll be back. Let me find the music. I mean, when you gotta go, you gotta go. So, where is Asher? I think this is Asher Fuller here. Oh, is that? I'm back. That's better. So I hope I've persuaded you of what wonderful materials those are. I'm enjoying working with them so much. Uh, Now let's persuade you how great jelly gouache are because I absolutely love working with these as well. So my field kit is, let me come down a little bit again. My field kit is pretty manky, but I keep working with these right down to the very last bit because I discovered this way of getting in there with the palette knife and just flipping them over so I have a clean bit to work with. Um, and once the white doesn't get too manky, what I tend to do when I go out is I put in two whites. So I have one white that I decide, okay, that's the white I don't mind getting dirty, and this is the one I'm trying to keep clean. And I find that really helpful when I'm out. So I'll try and work on the small palette on this for a while just to show you how far the small palette goes in terms of what you can do and everything. But I have to move over a little bit. So this is an important moment because this is the first page in my botanical journal getting broken in. And because I took so much care in making it and I love it so much, I was terrified of this first page. And I actually cheated. I did a page that was this book. I wonder again. Um, I did a. That's why I did a page that was a watercolor page back here. You see, to take a bit of the fear out. And this was the first piece I did. It wasn't even attached. I stuck it into the back of the book afterwards. I left space for sticking things in that I did outside. Because there's always going to be something I decide is botanical after all. And as I say, this isn't exactly botanical, but it is. It is because it wants to be the shape of this sketch pad. So it's I'm letting it in. So we're doing our gouache, but I can treat the I can treat the gouache like a watercolor because I've seen other people using these type of gouaches, and they like being used like a watercolor. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use it like a watercolor. I'm getting out I have my tonal reference here now, and I have the color reference I did in the field. I also have um it's from the thumbnail. Actually, I have another color reference here. It's just a close up of what I took the last day, which shows the rocks. Is it going to be any use? I don't know. It might be. I don't know. Because they didn't turn out great in that one. What else have I got that's color? Yeah, this is what I'm looking at on my screen now at the moment. That might be of some use to me for the color one. I don't know. So let's just uh, get our proportions right again, and I will be referring to this for the proportions. So I'm doing pretty much the same shebang again. You can't see the top of that, but it's really only trees going in. Trust me on this. Here, I'll bring it down so you can see. And I'm going to be concentrating my efforts down here in this area a lot. And I don't have any of that masking fluidiness going on at all in this. Might be able to actually remove some on the other one. Look, it's dry enough to do now. See the way it's left some of the really pale areas in, so you can work back into them there if you want. But things like the grasses that were running across, that's kind of handy for those. So it is handy to take some of that out in order to see more of the. I have to mess up my floor. Just swept this morning. I don't know how so much dirt gets into this place. I suppose I'm tramping it in and out of the garden, and You know, I always bring it in on my boots after doing that in landscaping. So you see how when all the whitest bit goes back in, it kind of lifts everything up. Now you would work back up to the edge of some of these to modify edges and things like that, but it's good as an indicator of tones. And I could have done with it actually that day, or just my white acrylic um, pen would have done. Although it's a bit thick, I need to get a thinner one as well. But those gouache are great for out in the field as well. I really like them. So I'm gonna try and still can't see my rocks that well. Well, I'm not there yet. Always more work to do. But this is the best sketch for actually seeing the structure of them in a way. Because I've got this guy in it, and then how it fits into the other ones, which you can't really see that clearly in that. Um, I had two of them sort of together, and this does show to a certain extent how they fit in. And there's this aspect as well that sometimes every time you look at something, it looks different. You have to decide. Now, this is actually slightly out a bit more in to the left than the other one was, but we're there. We're there. And all down here in this bit, this was had so much of a tangle in front of it. It was quite hard to see this bit, but now that I'm looking at it in color, we might be able to do more than that bit. So it's like a jigsaw. We're trying to put all the bits together, and I've got some mossy bits. That's the mossy bit that I'm following the shape of, and then blue bits. Okay, and that's a bit mossy, and then there's the weird white shapes that I can never quite deal with, and then more darkness around it. So you see the way I'm still staying pretty loose about the whole thing and not getting too involved in particular shapes. I think that's good for me to do so, okay? Because I think I'll learn more by not settling into too much detail. And there are these grasses and things that are up through everything, um, cutting across everything, that kind of add to the kind of difficulty of it. But again, I'm not gonna worry about them too much. So I just have enough indicated here to help me get started. Right. I love this pencil as well. This is a little paper mate that rolls up. I can't remember if this one is refillable, but if it's not, I will really miss it when it goes. It's lasted forever. But it's such a skinny little pencil. I do love drawing with mechanical pencils. Okay, so this one is going to be all about color. So um, I'm not just duplicating what I was doing in the previous exercise. No, no, no. Banish the thought. We're finding I have linear things gone on now, but I'm going to find some of the forms with whoops, sorry, don't have you up high enough. I have to bring it up a bit more. Bashing off you with the paintbrushes. This is why I often don't work on bigger pieces, because some of the oil paintings, my brushes are too long, and you don't get a satisfactory close-up shot or something. So I'm working with working with bluey tones here, and I'm trying to do this thing of treating it a bit watery colory because these jelly gouache I've discovered from watching other people using them, um, they respond quite well to being treated like watercolor first and then having paint built up a bit more on them. So I'm going to put some of the dark moss in on top of this. And I discovered from Sandy Hester, who I was talking about earlier in the live stream, uh, a mossy green that was so easy that I wasn't using in my mix last week and was so accurate for what I wanted. It was just black and yellow for a mossy green. So easy. Now I can actually come along in this approach and do something quite dark and then work something lighter over it if I want. So it's handy like that. I'm looking for another area that's this color that I can fill in, and that's the moss on the rocks down here. So you see, because some of the very pale grasses and everything enliven this picture, you kind of do have to, well, I've decided that they're an important part of the picture. You do have to decide for yourself whether you're going to be able to put them in after putting in all the dark stuff or whether you have to deal with it first like you often would in a watercolor. But because this is gouache, you can do that. I was saying earlier that's, very light colors on this jelly gouache don't sit, sink down, the color sinks down a little bit. Apparently, according to other people, and I don't know because I don't have enough experience of gouaches, um, that doesn't necessarily happen with other gouaches. There's a painter called Sarah Burns, who's working in Scotland, and she's on YouTube, and I've heard her say that about other gouaches. I think I'm pretty sure it was her talking about the difference between jelly gouache and other gouaches because she uses gouaches a lot. Um, so I think it was her. Um, it might have been on our blog. She said it. I don't know. And I thought when I heard that, I thought, oh yeah, okay, that explains what was happening to me, and it's not just me imagining it. Because when I have a new medium I'm working with, like for example the Kuretake watercolors, takes me ages to get used to what they do, um, compared to other mediums. And sometimes I'll do something and I can't decide whether it's my technically, whether I'm just messing up or it's some aspect of or quality of the medium itself. For example, I was using Kuretake watercolors recently, the Zig palette, and on this sketchbook, the watercolor paper, I was painting a a petal of a rose, and I couldn't get fine detail in on it at all. It kept just disappearing on me, and I was saying to myself, I don't know if that's the watercolors or the paper, because the paper was new as well, you see. So I don't know yet because I haven't tried enough on that paper to see. But now that I have the Cotman set, it seemed to hold a little bit more detail when I did the same subject on the same page actually with the Cotman. But I would have to try it with a few things to be really sure. So I'm getting my dark. Oh, it's lovely to get the color out after doing tonal study. But I did enjoy the tonal study, I have to say. And you'll see me doing a thing with these gouaches every so often. I noticed it on the last live stream. I kept doing it where I forget I'm working with gouache and I start treating it like oil paint. And I start loading it up real thick and just, globbing it on, which I get is the way I get with the oil paints when I get nicely warmed up. And it doesn't work best like that. It actually works best doing what I'm doing here. And thanks to other YouTubers for helping me discover this, which is this filling in areas like a watercolor first, and then working over it a little bit thicker, you see. Um, what that does is it gets rid of any little white um, sky holes, if you like, that appear. I'm actually enjoying the way this brush is drying out now. It's quite good for this gorse look. Isn't that nice? It's actually doing the gorse great. If I tried to get that again, I wouldn't be able to. I was trying, I had a different brush out, and it was working like this briefly, and then I had more water on it, and it wouldn't work like that again. But sometimes, you see, I give the impression because I'm talking all the way through things that I'm uh, thinking my way through the whole thing, like, in a very deliberate way. Sometimes you're just playing like this, you know, I just took off there and started just playing and really enjoying myself there with it. Um, and that's good. You're in the flow, you see, when you're doing that. Okay, so where am I? And you lose the power language when you get like that as well. So to kind of get your act together there. Now, I've got a few different types of greens going on, which I want to explore. And you see how quickly that palette fills up. And that's why at that stage when I'm outside, I might wipe back a little section of that. I usually have those kinds of cloths with me. But I do have another palette here, as it happens, to work with. And this is the palette that came with the jelly gouache. And it's nice. So I'm adding a lemon yellow to that now, just to bring the color up a bit. Because it's quite zingy in some sections. It's green, but it's an almost yellow. And I don't have to worry about masking off for any of these bits, because when that's dry, I can paint that really pale color on top of it. And I'm going to get in there there's a light red in this set that's nice as well. And going to get in there. That is actually a skin color that I don't have it out in this small palette, because I can make it okay on the palette by adding a bit of white and a bit of yellow ochre if I want, but that sort of matches the color of this dead kind of stuff here. So I'm gonna just make use of that. Now, dark areas again. I'm going to go back in to that dark area and fill that in, so that I can come back over with that paler color if I want. So there's actually a nice dark brown in that set that you don't. Oh, that's the black. Where did I put dark brown? And every so often, like when I come home, if I had these open for the day, I might do a little spritz of water on them before I close them. And I've never had any problem yet with these drying out. I think I must have had them a year, because I think I was using them. I was using them last summer anyway, and they have become a really indispensable part of my field kit. So I'm toying with the idea of either buying another set of these as they're running out, you see, or just using the same wells but buying gouache I have a Pabeo brand gouache that I can get a lot of colors in that I can buy online and fill the wells up with them. And I don't think that that gouache goes dry. You see, once the deep wells are filled up with them, it'll behave like a jelly gouache. So it's a good plan. I've bought a few colors like that already. And there's such a good range of colors in those Pabeo, and they're cheap as well, that I think that that might be the route I'd be going. But it's a very good value set. And while I love other gouaches, um, and the idea of getting a good set of gouaches and they might perform slightly better, they tend to be in smallish tubes for the amount that I could sort of afford to buy. That I'm sort of going, don't know if I don't know if I would want to buy big enough things of gouache to be able to. I like using them as a jelly gouache. I like having them in a big, deep well like that, already squeezed out and everything, just for convenience for working in the field. And I have heard Sarah Burns saying that uh, she likes dried out gouache as well, using it like a watercolor. So she must have been her, I think. See, I get these things wrong all the time. Might not be, but I think it was her trying out the jelly gouache. Um, she doesn't normally use them, you see, and I think she actually went back to, I cannot remember what brand she normally uses, but it's not those. But there are things, limits about them in the way that they dry and that sinkage thing that they do, but um, I like them, and for the price, I think they're really, really good. And I love the way they behave on the paper. They just, when you're putting them on, you see, for me, the experience, it's like those sketching pencils, the watercolor sketching pencils I was using earlier. Um, the way it feels on the paper is very important to me, that I'm enjoying the experience while it's happening. I have three colors of green going on here. Talking about enjoying the experience, I'm enjoying the color. Trying to get more of this using the edge of my. Now you see, this is where I'm having to go thicker to get that transitiony bit. And I have three greens from that set out. That set has a lot of premix stuff in it, which is nice, but like, I mean, you still have to decide then when you go out which are the most useful colors for you to mix from. And you will end up mixing different colors. I'm trying to keep the edge of this mossy thing a bit, but have a little bit of transitiony stuff happening in it as well. And I think I need to get my palette involved. And with this one, I'm not really generalizing as much in my painting, because some of the little greens that are in between the light green are explaining the structure of the thing well. So I am including a little bit of detail in this one, because that explains the type of moss it is quite well, I think. And you see, I'm putting little bits of detail in this as well. So I'm being a little bit more finicky in a way. And again, I'm managing to avoid the rocks very well. I'm doing all the moss and everything. And I think this is my unconscious is kind of a bit afraid of doing the rocks. Okay, we'll tackle the rocks. There are two different things happening in the rocks. The purple, which I'm always afraid of purple, but I now have I thought I had a bit of purple out on my palette. Looked purple, now it doesn't. I must have mixed it up from a blue. And let's see, can I make my own? I do have a purple in this set, but the other thing Sandy Hester did point out in her very good um, last video upload was how if you introduce, and purple is a good example of this, if you introduce what she was calling an outside color into your composition, that meaning that is a color that you haven't used anywhere and that you just grabbed ready mixed from somewhere. If you introduce a completely outside color into your composition, uh, don't be surprised if some of that harmony that the piece had just instantly disappears. And I really started to understand that last year. When I was doing live streams, I was doing a lot of live streams about color mixing, and I did one about neutrals, right? And neutrals are colors that you get from doing this kind of thing, mixing up all the colors that you've already used in your painting, and you mix them all together, and you will get a color that's a kind of a in between sort of a color, you know. But that's a neutral. And the wonderful thing about a neutral is if you add it to any color in your picture, it has an instant kind of harmonizing effect on your picture. It's like magic. And that's why it works, because it's not an outside color. It is already in harmony. Your painting is like a little environment that's its own ecosystem, if you think of it that way. And you don't want to bring in an alien species. It's going to stand out like an alien, isn't it? So she did a very good job of that. I like this brush for doing things, you see. She did a very good job of that video. And some of her subs were saying in comments that some people have been making negative comments about that video, saying, why are you spending so much time doing this? But you see, people watch videos for different reasons. Some videos people might watch for just entertainment. You know, some people want to see do a like a finished picture of something, and then they feel sort of they've got their entertainment out of that. And then some people want something kind of instructional to happen. Now, at least that's looking a bit rocky. Hopefully, you think so. I finally got in there and tackled the rock. I'm looking at the screen just to make sure that I'm not cutting you out of the picture. That would be terrible. I'd have been painting that bit for like 10 minutes and it wasn't even on screen. And this is what I like about these, that you can use them. I'm so used to oil paints that they kind of feel like oil paints for me when I'm using them, and I like that. It's sort of you think with them in the same way you would with oil paints. Um, and I don't always get that with watercolor. I'm getting a lot more comfortable with watercolor than I used to be. Um, Sort of the last 2 years I've been working with watercolor, and any progress with me is so slow, you know. Um, it seems so slow, but like a couple of years down the road, if I start doing something and I think it's something I want to do and it's worthwhile and everything, I will sometimes not see progress for ages, and sometimes we'll go through this phase. I've heard other people call it the awkward phase, but for me, I think it goes way beyond awkward, an embarrassing phase, I'd call it. But that goes on for ages, and you get kind of like a little bit sort of, oh, I'm so awful at this, and then you'll get like couple of years down the road, you'll go, oh, hang on, I think I'm getting slightly better at it. you know, slightly maybe, and you sort of gives you a bit of hope again. I do despair constantly of like, feel like I'm really really bad at it, but I cheer myself up with the thought, yeah, but do you like doing it? Yeah, I love doing it. I love doing it. I can't imagine doing anything else. I just love doing it so much. So that has to be good enough sometimes, you see. It is downheartening, uh, though, when you know you don't see progress ever. That could happen. You might not never see progress. Or if you're pushing really hard and things get worse, the harder you push, and then you have to try not quite so hard, and then that's hard not to try quite so hard, you know? Um, that can happen. And it is human to want to see some progress, isn't it? But the important thing is not to lose the joy in doing it, isn't it? You reckon? So I'm really, really enjoying doing this. There's so much ooh and ah going on. What is she talking about, you might say? Well, I just mean I'm actually enjoying the rocks now because I think maybe even after doing the tonal study, it has me highly sensitive to color now, and I'm going, oh, every time I see a color going down. And I'm enjoying the fact that I can just take out a white and draw the structure of the rocks with that white in a fairly fluid kind of way. I like it. I like that. I do. Starving. Don't think about that. I should be able to go for hours and hours and hours and hours, and instead I'm going, I'm hungry. I do find I'm a person who has to stop for a lot of cups of tea. So I'm not really 100% sure what happens down here. This is where you could, if you were doing a painting and you wanted the painting to really look really, really good in a representational way, you might keep going back to the spot, you see, and do extra studies. Like I could go back and do extra studies of that bit there. Um, but what happens with me is that if I get a spot I like, I might go back a year or two later. So I might draw the same spot only once that year, but I find myself back there the next year. I did that with that piece that I did on a live stream a few weeks back, actually. It was, I'm loving the marks this brushes me. It's leaving me a lot of freedom. It was that field that had all the lovely yellow ochre coloured grass in it. And speaking of which, was I trying to do a red colour or a yellow ochre colour or what there? I can't remember. Um, and it had reddy trees, and I found myself back there this year because I was painting at the sort of periphery of the field last year, and I was painting in the field beside it as well. But I kept passing that field and thinking, that's lovely. And I sort of had it in my sort of little must go there again pile, sort of saying to myself, I see you, I'll be back to you. Get little bits of orange going on here. You see the way it's kind of important in something that's coloured. It's actually picked up too much colour. To get some of the little, not just colour, but some of the linear elements have to happen at the same time, I find, for whatever way I paint. Anyway, that's how it has to go. And this is one of the things I love doing in oils. I love creating a line by going up to the edge of the line. You've seen me do it so many times on trees. I get so much fun out of doing that. I just enjoy it. I enjoy um the negative spaces between things. And I also want to come along. Well, maybe I'll actually do this first, hang on, because I have so much white going on here. I want to eliminate some of that white and get a fairly sort of a dead color going for some of the gorse volumes, if you like, which are quite a dead sort of shade. And then there's some kind of light readiness in there as well. But you see the way that works really well with treating it like a watercolor first, because there were a lot of things weren't working for me with these paints until I sort of um started remembering to start with a little wash underneath them to help, because it's just easier than building up this way, you know, and having white shown. It's like, I suppose it's like doing an underpainting in oil, except in my underpainting in oils, I quite often um don't put in a full underpainting of all the different colors. I just put an underpainting in maybe a sienna and a dark brown or something like that, and then start working in painting proper in straight away in oils. Sorry, I'm mixing up more green here because I want to establish some of the paler green this section in here, because it is a foregroundy thing that pushes those rocks back in space a bit. So it kind of helps them make sense. So if we look at the range of greens I have so far, I have one, two, three, about four different greens going on at the moment, which is fine. So let's deal with this rock over here. We can do it. Lose my fear of rocks and lose my fear of purple. That's my mission. There isn't actually that much purple in those rocks. It's kind of I suppose it is. It's got heading over towards purple on that color wheel, over towards the purple side a bit. But it needs to be more vibrant than that. So I think I'm gonna have to get the cyan out of this because it's too grey. Now maybe it's the ultramarine. See, the sort of blue matters as well. So it was a much more ultramarine blue. And, this part of me struggles against that because I cannot believe you see that in nature. But actually, you do. And it's my eyes that are. See, I forgot I wasn't working with oil paint. Just wash that in. Now, and then I can just come in with a bit of white and sort of draw the white. And maybe the licheny bits might be a bit more naturalistic for going into a sort of a wet edged thing. I think they might. We'll try it. See, this is supposed to be like a little licheny bit. I can never get those convincing for some reason. Why? Maybe I just worry about them too much and I shouldn't worry about it. I should just carry on. I don't know. I want to get this a bit darker because it's a dark green clinging onto that. No, it's not dark enough. It's more like it. And I want it a little bit warmer as well. So a little bit of alizarin and a sienna go in as well. And I'm too lazy to change the brush, so I'm gonna just go over to the edge of the brush. That's better. And then up here, that's gonna go a more purpley color. We're getting there, I think. Might look at it later and go, oh, I didn't get it at all. But at the moment, I feel like I'm getting there. Be interesting to look at the two of them together as well. I think so. Can't put them both up on the wall because this one is in my sketchbook. But I like having some things in my sketchbook because they're organized in sequence already. And then when you look back on them and you want to cheer yourself up the next year about progress and so on, you can see them all in sequence and say, oh, yeah, look, I got better. I got better there at Ferns. I got better there at Gorse. Bits that progress that you might not see at the time, you might see later on. You're always looking for ways to cheer yourself up about these things. So I'm going to put in a couple of little tiny bits of, I'm going to change brush just for the hell of it. I'm going to put in a couple of tiny bits of slightly more purpley area in this rock because there is some purpliness. Not a huge amount, but treat it a little bit more watercolory. Actually have to knock it back towards the blue a bit there. And then I want to get the edge of it with the green. This is part of my problem with mosses, is getting them to sort of look like they're um, surrounded by grass, but they have the shadow around them be convincing that they're sitting in okay. And we do have some areas of greeniness, and I'm gonna make that lovely mossy color with orange that I like so much to get across here, because I want to get across to where the lichen bits are going right up to the edge of the page. What the heck? Live dangerously, because I want that rock sitting in as well. So one of the ways of doing that is to go right around the rock. Don't leave any white bits. And I'm coming up to a very whitey grass. And in fact, I keep thinking this must have some sort of little tiny bit of, I have trouble getting white enough. And I don't think it's dirt in my white. It's just the colour is kind of tricky there. So there's very pale grass. Wait till I just clean my brush and we put in some of that very pale My computer's going to be running out of steam soon. I need to finish this soon. I hate rushing them. Okay, so here's the pale grass, and we're going up really near the white. Okay, ended up with the blue cast. I don't know how it did that. All right. Now, oh, sorry, after painted a big section there, you couldn't even see. Sorry, I do that when I get engrossed in what I'm doing. I forget I'm filming. So you see there the bits going up to the sky. And that is a huge challenge for me, getting that pale now. I might have been using the wrong kind of yellow. Oh no, do you know what it is? I have a bit of dirt in the paint and I keep picking up the bit of dirt. That's the problem. For some things, you need to have very clean paint. So let me try this. That's better. That's a cleaner paint. Better color could be even paler. Just taking a little tiny bit of yellow out of it. And I'm going into the colors I already have now at this stage. Remember the thing we said about the neutrals and harmony in a painting? There's where you're haven't even bothered with the bows very much at the moment, but I just want that background color for a bit of something mountainous was happening there, running behind things. And then we have bits of red going down. And then the sky. So this has to all, you see, make sense in relation to everything else. And left to my own devices now, well, in fact, I do have water on the table there. Things get bad, but I was going to say I'd change my water. This paper has behaved beautifully um, for the paint, no buckling really at all. And the paint is just sitting on it really nicely. It's a nice smooth finish, so quite happy with that actually. Sorry, I'm hitting you. My oil painty thing again. I'm trying. What'll we do with me? I can never stop just gooping things on. But I did want to get some of those darker colors going and some of the mid mid to darkish toned greens on the trees just to get some of the balances of tones and colors going. So I think this is starting to make sense. That dark tone there has reminded me that this could go a bit darker. See, so this is why it's worth working around the picture. A little bit more black in it, in fact. Because I'm looking for how dark do I have to go to get this thing working, you see. And there was quite a lot of dark area in it. And I'm going to demonstrate I'm losing my fear of purple by doing this. Do a really deep purple rock in there because that's sort of how it's going when it gets down to there. And I think that's looking a bit better now. Because one of the things that I was trying to work on was my getting my tones, enough of a range of tones that I thought everything was getting a little bit samey toned all over, was kind of one of the issues in my painting. So this is better, getting there. I'm seeing it better. In other words, I'm starting to see it better. I think. It's not fast. You're not going to lash something out in 5 minutes and just problem solved. It does require work, but fun work. Let's get rid of some of the white and get some of that lovely mid green in. I do find myself hurrying a little bit more because I think for a start, the battery on my computer, which isn't plugged in, is going to run out, and my phone. So I think I'm still going at the moment, but I wouldn't think I have much time left. I don't have much time left. It sounds very grim, doesn't it? There. No, blue. I want that a much more blue, but paler. There. Better. See, there's all these kind of modulations that have to happen in the color as well as you go along. It's not just the same all the way. There, we got rid of some of the white. So that makes it read better straight away. And then some of the white is going back in spots. And I'm going to do something else with the white and try to get more of the white in this little weird area here. It was somewhere down here the lichen was. This lichen has me a bit defeated. Oh, that looks a bit better than it did though. And although they could do with being maybe slightly bluer, they're not too bad. I haven't mastered it yet, but we're getting there. We're getting there. It's better. Yeah, I sort of feel I'm getting rocks slightly bit better than I was. I am getting a bit more comfortable with the bluiness of them. Don't know how comfortable I am with the purpliness yet, but one thing at a time. And I have no problem with the purple tones in trees, but I do tend to modify it with this kind of a brown, which there isn't as much of in the rocks. Whoops, sorry, I'm doing the thing again. I'm of going out of the shot. See, I don't want to start making my sketch pads the optimal size for social media things. I haven't sunk that low yet. Social media tends to be not great for anything. Well, I mean, I suppose you could say this is great for landscape orientation painting, but um, the reality of the thing is that your paintings are just different from everything that you do. So they can't really accommodate you for everything, can they? I don't know. I think I'm getting some. This is what I choose to believe that I'm getting somewhere. It's kind of interesting. I'm actually coming over a lot further with something than I did initially now. And then I'm going to work back into it with a mossier green, which involves that orange, but could be made as simply with yellow and black, which I need to thank Sandy for. Because I wouldn't have thought it. Seems too simple. So has a really, really warm mossy green with a cool bluey green beside it, and then your really deep blacks beside that. So it's nice. I'm liking it. And I'm doing my oil painting. Partially it's from the pressure to work fast before my battery goes. Okay, so the whole swing is up that way. And my mossy green going there. And then four bits like the very pale bits, which is coming out a bit grayer. I'm putting lingo back in, see. And that is the advantage of working with paint. I couldn't do that quite as handy in the drawing, but I didn't really work. So I mean I could use that approach for the grasses and everything if I wanted to. So I wasn't able to generalize about areas of colour quite as quickly as I was in the tonal drawing, because because I felt that some of the linear elements like these things I'm painting at the moment helped define the area's colour, balance and amount and everything. Um, and I kind of felt like even kind of the foreground here is kind of missing things until that really pale color goes in. And I'm sort of saying, well, I can't see another way of really putting in that pale color without just painting a really skinny line of it, like for a piece of grass. It doesn't make visual sense to me to put it in another way. Do you know what I mean? So, oh, I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that I can generalize about bigger areas as much in the color piece as I could in the black and white piece. But I think in terms of um, just trying to get rid of some of the white on the paper here to get it to read well. And there were a lot of whites up here. I think, I mean, they're, you know, I could have come in darker with a lot of stuff. Sorry, I find myself fiddling around with the Prussian blue in the corner that doesn't even want to cooperate. There was a bluey bit happening over here I wanted to investigate. And then some of my nice mossy green again up here. I think generally it's a better painting than the last one. I mean, it's, you know, sometimes things just turn out better because you're not doing them in the field. But if you look at it in terms of tone and color, uh, it's less all over the same color as this one, but then than this one, I should say. I think. Uh, you know, it's hasn't moved on like completely resolved everything perfectly or anything, but I think it was a good exercise. And I have the black and white version there as well. That was also good exercise. And you can see how these very pale areas of color, if I get in there with this brush with that very pale color on it and put those in, I think it will push some of that stuff back a little bit more. Not sure that I got this exactly the right tone or the overhang exactly. Something's not balanced up right there. It's not working as well as this. Perhaps it's just, yeah, it needs little highlighty bits of paler color going on, which you can see from um, the black and white one. You don't really see it so much in this, but this has generalized about this area being much darker. Definitely the overhang there, I could work back into the black a little bit there and have that darker so that that shelf coming out slightly overhanging the rock underneath is slightly more emphasized. But um, it's not a bad attempt generally, and I got a lot of practice in. So I'll do another half an hour. Get a cup of tea and maybe a square chocolate or something into your piece of fruit, and do another half an hour, and I'm happy. And I think I managed to do this without my battery dying because I still see it. Coming up. So that's it. A very long session, but I hope you got some good ideas out of that about why you might break up the problem into a color versus black and white thing. I think my range of tones and colors are coming together more in that one than they were in that one, in this lower half. You know, some nice things I think happening color wise, and it has interesting bits in it. But I don't know, maybe it's definitely in the stones. I think it's slightly come there. But as I say, progress is usually slow for me. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I did. Okay, folks, I'll see you, and I'll try and have that upload for you about how super organized I am in my space within the next few days. And you can laugh and say, "Oh my God, her space is such a mess." See ya. Bye. Have a great weekend.